Welcome to Fantasy Fistfull of Lead Island. What are you, some kind of joker? Yeah, we're not actually on an island. We're going to be in the woods today, and we're going to see the forces of the elves just trying to get across the table. Yo, I'm walking here, but in Sindarin. I don't know what Sindarin is for. I'm just walking here, bro. We've got a leader who is mounted. He's a veteran. He's got the running attack. With the pike, he only needs to be within 2 inches of you to whack at you. And then he can continue his movement and take a second whack at the next guy. He also has a banner. I bought one of those this time. So see the little yellow banner he's got there? That gives everybody in his team +1 to recovery for the whole time. If you are within 12 inches of him, you get an additional +1 on recovery. He is only wearing light armor, and I think it's about it. He is mounted, so I do have a separate. If he gets dismounted, we'll replace him with a different figure. He is backed up by a sergeant. That's the guy with the big sword. He is a brawler. He's got nerves of steel, sword, and heavy armor, so he's going to be the slowest guy. He's going to be the hardest one to get across the table. We may lead with him and use him as a blocking fullback, and then we've got 3 archers who are snipers. They reroll shooting. They have a sword, a longbow, and light armor. Now bear in mind, elves, as presented in Monsters and Mazes, do have some special abilities. They have ranger and righteous traits. Now righteous won't matter. It just means that you can't pair with evil characters like chaos sorcerers or assassins. The ranger does come in handy because it means that you don't face the half movement penalty for moving through broken ground. And when you are in melee and broken ground, you have an additional +1. That'll help them get across the table. So as far as stats go, our leader is going to be a fire lord. See, he's got the little fiery dagger there, and he does have a sword. He doesn't have leadership. In Mazes and Monsters, I don't think leaders automatically get the leadership trait, which is fine, because he's leading an ogre and a bunch of orcs. They don't really respond all that well. But he is a master spellcaster with a haste scroll. If he drops the scroll, whoever he drops it on gets 3 actions that turn, which will help chasing down those squishy little knife ears. He does have bodyguard, cunning, weakling, and smart, which is a killer combination. When you've got a leader who is cunning, he rerolls a task roll. Spellcasting is a task roll. With smart, he's at +1. So a master spellcaster only fails on a 1, and he gets a reroll. We're probably not going to see any miscasts. His ogre is a brawler, a brute. He is large and impervious. Old Large Marge is wearing effectively light armor. He doesn't, you can see, all he's got is some like magic tattoos on him, but that thick hide makes him equivalent to light armor. And then that big old club he's got, the old Louisville chugger, that is going to be counted as a 2-handed, I know he's wielding it one hand, but he's a big guy. That's going to count as a 2-handed warhammer, which means it has AP2. It reduces your armor to zip, zilch, nada, nothing. All of the orcs that you see are bloodthirsty, which means they have to charge if they're within 10 inches of their opponent. When they charge, they get a +1 melee and a +1 to wound. The 2 guys with the bow, that's this guy, and I think this guy has a bow. Let me see if I turn him. Can you see that? Oh, no, he's got a knife. I got the wrong one. Sometimes my old man eyes don't work so good. So here we go. There's our number 2 bowman. They don't have anything else. I just pulled them straight out of the book. The guy on the right with the scary shield, he has light armor and a shield, and he's got a sword. So all 3 of these guys have +1 to melee because of the swords they're carrying. And I will point out, the bows for the orcs here have a range of 9 inches. You're hitting on a 5-up. At up to 18, you're hitting on an 8-up. The elves have long bows, which is from 12 to 24. For the leader, I simply took the spellcaster, basically as written, leader, sergeant, and 3 regular troops. The sergeant here is technically classified as a minor nasty. That is used if you are using the dungeon generation system from Monsters and Mazes, which includes things like, hey, you've got wandering monsters, roll a d10. Is it a group of rabble? Is it 2 regulars? Is it a minor nasty? A single tough creature? And again, when you get to things like lairs, you have to roll for the contents. It's got traps in here. It's got all kinds of good stuff. Card-driven system, much like the game itself. here you go. We got a lair room, minor nasty, single tough, or a major nasty. I think the major nasty is equivalent to a leader, but we don't need to worry about that today because we are doing a miniature war fight, right? We're going to do just a straight battle. The elves are going to start within 6 centimeters of one of the corners of the table. Before we establish which one, all of the trees and hedges are going to stay exactly where they are. Trees and hedges and the hill, at least half the hill, blocks line of sight. The banks of the stream do not, but we're not going to move. Normally we move the trees around. Obviously, this is rough going, this is rough going, this and the pond. The pond and the stream they're dangerous ground. When you move through, if any part of your turn's movement is through the dangerous terrain, you have to make a skill check. It's a task check at 5 up. If you're wearing heavy armor, that difficulty goes to a 7 up. If you are wearing light armor, it's a 6. Note we have a ford here and a ford here where that rule does not apply. And movement through those are, again, at half speed, unless you're an elf, in which case you move at full speed. And as I said, the hedges block line of sight. Now, these are very tall hedges. In order to force your way through, you have to spend 3 centimeters worth of movement. The house blocks all movement and line of sight. So which corner do the elves come in on? I'm going to cut for it. We're going to go spade, hearts, diamonds, clubs. And with a spade, the elves will come on over here. So I'll deploy all of them. And for the Dark Lord, let me deal for that. I'll cut the deck kind of randomly. I'm not a magician. I don't know how to do that. We're going to call this corner black and that one red. For the leader, he's going to come in down here. The sergeant will come on up there. We'll have one... Oh, I should have specified that before. One of the orcs is going to start here. We'll put a bow down here, and then I have the other bow guy. Sorry, the bow, and sword. So the leader has... The Fire Lord has the sword-armed orc as his bodyguard down here. The ogre and the 2 bow-armed orcs are going to start in that corner. The elves simply deployed with their champion in the front and the sergeant in the front as well, with the 3 archers coming up behind. The terrain presents a difficult challenge for the Dark Lord here because, if we get a little more light on, there we go. There's a channel here that the nearest open ground will go straight for the elves. On the other hand, he can drift out into this open area, maybe get on top of the hill, and be able to start dropping some of those boom boom spells. Now, because he only has 2 wounds, but he does have the bodyguard ability, he can slow down the elves and let the sword guy take his wounds for him while he's dropping all those spells. On the other hand, the same thing applies for the ogre and these 2 bowmen up here in this corner. The ogre is behind the tree here, and you've got this long line of terrain. So we're going to send the ogre straight in, and the orc archers will try to get into position somewhere in here to act as a secondary lineup. That's the thinking anyway. It depends on the cards. One of the reasons I enjoy this game so much is that it allows me as a solo wargamer to surprise myself. I just told you the intentions of both the elves and the orcs. Even here in the first turn, the turn order is going to matter, and that's where the cards come in. I deal a king and an 8 for these 2 guys, and it's left and right, left and right. The ogre is going to get dealt a 10, and then we've got a jack and a jack. So the orcs, it looks like, are going to have to commit first. On the other side of the table, the leader gets a 10 and a 9. Who dealt these cards? And my 3 archers, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to throw 3 cards down, at least on this first turn. They're all functionally equivalent, and they're all going to go last anyway. So now I can move my figures in the order that the cards dictated. Unfortunately for the elves, despite the fact that they have Ranger as an ability, they do have to cross at the ford unless they want to make a task roll on this turn. They would have ended their movement in the stream and made a task roll or take a shock. And then because they're still in the stream starting the next turn, that would be a second task roll. They could probably succeed at those. Maybe we give them a +1 with the Ranger skill for crossing the stream. You can do that. We're not. We're just going to force them to take the ford. And of course, the leader is in the front. The nice thing for the elves is with all this cover, the wizard doesn't have line of sight on them yet, but he will be catching line of sight here pretty darn soon. We deal out another suite of cards. We have a couple of spades who both want to go first. They declare king of spades, but this middle archer back here, he's got the genuine article. He is going to have to go first. Then we move, well, then it goes. The heart is stronger than the diamond. So the ace of hearts is the first king of spades, and the ace of diamonds will be the third king of spades to move. The king of hearts moves next. That's this sergeant. Then the queen of hearts, our troll, moves to here. Our ogre, I'm sorry, I misgendered, mismonstered him. This archer is going to run up to here. Remember, we're going to set him somewhere around here. Maybe we can get off an overwatch shot or two. But remember, they have bloodthirsty. They have to charge a figure within 10 inches. So we need to make sure that we've got line of sight that will keep those elves far enough away that we shoot, don't run. Next up is going to be the eight of hearts. So our bodyguard is going to race forward. Now, he doesn't have the movement to get to this guy. So we'll put him right about in the middle where whichever path the champion takes, we can jump on top of him. Alternatively, if the champion decides, so that puts the elf in a difficult position because he's either going to have to ride for the orc or he's going to be steered up towards that ogre. We don't want anything to do with that guy. Order of cards is going to be huge on the next turn. I'll finish moving. The elves only have to get 3 guys off the table. So maybe we bring our sergeant up to the ogre, but again, it all depends on what cards are dealt. The ogre gets a wild. That archer is going to move late. Our archers keep getting hammered. In fact, our guard there, our sergeant, is going to have to wait. Whereas our spellcaster also gets to wait, which might work out well for him. The 2 archers over here get the jack and the 5. And that means our ogre can go first, and he's going to take a slightly different path. We'll bring him down 10. Yeah, he declares he wants to go first with the king. He's going to try to get down into this area. That will allow him to go either way. Now, they're not going to have a whole lot of time left when the elves get down there, but I think that's a trade you're willing to make. We have another archer who's going to step up to this corner, and that will end his turn. And then our champion now, with a jack of diamonds, does have the +1 to close combat. So I think we take the opportunity here to, now we can do something very interesting. He can move a total of 12 centimeters, and he's got a range of 2 centimeters. So we can ride to here, make an attack on this guy with the range of 2 centimeters. So he's got a spear, right? So he's making a ride-by attack. He also has the ability, and I'll show you that I wrote it down, running attack, which allows him, after this attack, to ride to here and make another attack and then continue his movement. Our orc has a sword, so he will be defending with a +1. He is rolling a d10. The leader of the elves is rolling a d12 because he is a veteran. He is also attacking a foot guy from a mounted position. That gives him an additional +1. He is also charging. That gives him an additional +1. And his pike gives him a +1. So he's at +3 versus +1. I love the fact that we're using d10s and d12s. That gives you a nice wide spread, a huge range of possibilities. This is not a foregone conclusion. With a +3, it's a good bet that the champion's going to win, but we get a 5 and a 6. So he did win, but it was a closer run thing than you might expect. If he had rolled just a little lower, nothing would have happened. He does make his, because he charged, he makes his wound roll. He only won by 1, so this is going to be a straight roll, but he uses the d12. And with the pike and the charge, I should say, ooh, does he get, he does not get a bonus on the wound roll for having charged. With a result of a 7, that forces the orc, who is wearing light armor, to make a save. Now, he can reduce this wound to a shock marker on an 8 or better, but he has a shield, so that becomes a 7 or better. And with a 2, he will fail, and this boss man goes down with a single wound. He'll have to use his action this turn to recover and stand up. Then our leader goes another, call it 3 centimeters to there, and offers another battle, and this one's going to go even worse. The fire guy he does have his sword, so he's at +1 on this melee. And again, even if the fire guy wins, because he's 2 inches away, I don't think he can hurt the guy with the pike. So the guy with the pike rolls an 8. Our fire guy rolls a 4. Oh, that becomes... Now, I'm not going to give him the +1 for the charge. He already spent his momentum fighting the boss. I don't think the rules are clear on this. Maybe they say somewhere and I just missed it. But he doesn't get the +1 for the charge now. So he's still at an 8. +9 because he's fighting a guy on foot, plus the pike gives him a 10. The guy on foot gets a total of 5. He is at +1 for the sword that he's carrying, and with a 5, the wound roll now is going to be at +2. 10 +2 without a save means we've eliminated the spellcaster, and this fight might be over before it began. I don't think the spellcaster bought... Well, no, he's not. He's going to transfer that to his bodyguard. The bodyguard is out of the fight. That's why I kept them within 2 centimeters of each other. Still, a bitter wound for that spellcaster who, I can't remember. I think he had the 7. We go to the instant replay. All right, the ref is coming out onto the field. He has reviewed the tape, and I'm sorry, you're activating on the 4. Might not make that big a difference. We'll find out here in a second. The next order of business is going to be to move these 2 archers, and then that archer over here. And this orc is going to race up to right about there. We're trying to make the angles work a little bit better so these orcs can get into position. Now it's time for Mr. Boom Boom. He's got an interesting choice. Oh, I forgot. This guy moves another 3 centimeters during his ride-by attack. Our fire guy is going to take the elves to Spelltown. And Boom Boom Town is going to cost him 1 action and force him to take a rest. His second action will be to gather his wits about him, take a deep breath. The problem with this spell is that he has to roll not a 1, and he rolls a 1 off the table, but there's the 1, take my word for it. But remember, he's cunning. This is a task roll, so he gets to re-roll that 1, and he gets an 8, so he gets the spell off. With a 5-inch diameter, both of these guys have to make a wound check. For the record, he followed the path of the elements, and he might have wanted to knock this guy off his horse first, but all we got to do is eliminate 3 of these figures, and we win. So instead, let's take the double hit. Let's drop the... And Fireball is such a classic spell. I mean, it's a classic for a reason, isn't it? The blue die will be for the guy on the left, the red for the guy on the right, and with an 8 and a 9... This guy, they get a save to reduce the severity. So the red die on an 8 or better becomes, that is a shock, no effect. And the blue die on an 8 or better becomes a shock. We get a 7 and a 6, neither succeeded. So this guy is taken off the table, and this guy receives a wound, and he falls down. Oh, singed. Not bad. If we can pull off a couple of more of those, we've got this game in the bag. That being the case, we're going to race. Are we within 10 centimeters? Can we get our champion in contact? We cannot. We don't want to risk another one of those spells, so we're going to have to spread out a little bit. And this guy has the next card, so 10 centimeters will bring him to here. And we could probably move 5 and take a bow shot. But then Mr. Ogre is going to be close enough to jump us, and we don't want to get jumped. This last guy, as I said, will bring him straight on, hey diddle diddle, to right there. He's about 2 centimeters shy, so he cannot attack. But if we get the right card, we are going to be doing that on the next turn. The shuffle comes next, And with it comes the deal. Cutting the deck so that you know I'm being honest, and now I want to deal them out individually. Mr. Ogre is going to go right away. 8 and 6 for the Orc Archers. The Archer on his feet gets a 4. The Bloody Archer gets a 10. Our Elf Champion gets an 8. The Spellcaster gets a 7, so he gets an additional reroll. And our Elven Champion gets a 3 of Hearts. That means Mr. Ogre gets to go first. And that's a little awkward, to be honest with you. He's going to have to come around this hillside, which will put him blocking the archers. All right. If that's the case, then instead, I'm going to bring him down to here. Because that way he leaves a line of fire open here. Oh, we got to... Maybe we swing him up this way just a little bit. 10 centimeters is a good long stretch that he can get into here. And if you don't have 3 complete centimeters, you have to stop at the hedges. He's our free safety, I guess, running around in the backfield. The next card is going to be a recovery roll. Remember, he is within 12 centimeters of the leader. He automatically gets a +1 because the leader has a banner. I think he gets an additional +1 because the leader is a leader, but that might just be for shock. Let's go to the rule book. It does. This is at +2. If he rolls a natural 1, he's still completely out of the game. With a result of an 11, he is going to go... No, wait, this is a recovery. So the model may stand. Now, he's still at -1 for all of his actions, and he's done for this turn. So that wound, that fireball still... created enough space and enough delay, except the next card is going to be the 8 of Hearts. Our champion now has to decide, am I going to run or am I going to fight this guy? And remember, you do get an additional 3 centimeters of movement. Let's give it a shot. Let's run in and let's give him the old what for. Our sergeant is going to have, he's a brawler, so he gets to re-roll. And he's got a sword, so he is at +1. The guy he's fighting is also at +1. So it's +1, so we get a 6 to a 3. I think we'll keep that. It's actually a 4 to a 6. With a difference of 2, our wound roll is going to be at nothing. It's just going to be a straight D10 to find out what happens. And he does not have a save, remember. So with a 4, he's going to take a shock marker. When you take a shock marker... That's not it. It doesn't just give you -1 to all of your checks. You also have to, I think is it fall back in melee? Oh, we can push him back 2 centimeters if we want, or we can trade places with him, or we can do both. In other words, is that what we want to do? I think we want to stay locked in combat. We're going to deliver the shock, and we're going to stay locked. This does slow us down a little bit. We could push him back 2 centimeters and then trade places, so that on our next turn, like if we had the second action, that would create the space that on our next turn, we could run away 10 centimeters. That's not the case here, though, is it? Instead, so that was our 8. We do have an 8 for this archer over here. In order to take his shot, he's going to have to move up to here, and that means this is not an aimed shot. Oh, let me measure that. Yeah, he can move 5. It is beyond 9 centimeters, so shooting at our leader is still going to require an 8 or better to get the hit. He gets a 1. Remember, on the D20, you subtract 10 if it's greater than 10, and that's his action. Then our spellcaster is going to go. Now, he's got a problem because he has to use his first action to fight a melee. He's using the red die. He gets a reroll. He gets a reroll. So we do our first check, and our blue guy has won with a score of 8 to 5. The red guy says, yeah, I definitely want to re-roll that. This time he gets a 10 for the win, and our blue guy says, well, that's great. I have a re-roll as well, and the result is going to be a 10 to a 6 for a +4. Oh, no, the shock gives you a -1. It's going to be a 9 to a 6 for a difference of 3, which doesn't actually make any difference. We're still at +1 on this wound check. That's going to be a 5, but the big boy has heavy armor. On a 5 or better, it becomes a shock. it becomes a shock. He passes his test, so he takes a shock, and our red wizard says, "Get off me, bro. Don't touch my body." Pushes him back 2 centimeters. Then this archer gets to step up, and he's going to have to move to just right about there and shoot past his friend. And he needs an 8 to hit. He's at long range. 8 hits the champion, and the champion takes a shock marker unless he passes an 8 up. With a 9, he ignores that. Question, if you're hit, you take a shock, that's when you have to retreat 8 centimeters. But because he passed it with his light armor, he's good. Now he gets to go, and the question is, does he run away, or does he fight this guy? I think we need to use our first action to fight. Are we within 2 centimeters? We might need to move close enough. I don't know. I'm going to roll a d10, and on an even, he can make the attack. A 20 is even, so he can make the attack. He's going to fight. Because he hasn't moved, he hasn't charged. This is going to be a straight die roll of a d12 versus a d10. The pike is +1. The mount is +1. I'm sorry. He's at +1 for the... Wait, do you get a +1 in melee for the pike? Or is it just for... I think you only get range. I think the sword is +1 to the melee roll. But the pike does not get a +1 to the melee roll. It just gets the... You can't be hurt because you're too far away for the guy with the shorty. The sword is +1. A pike is a polearm, which allows to attack from 2 centimeters away. Yeah, you don't get the +1 in combat. You do get a +1 if you're fighting a guy on foot. So they are still both at +1. And the fire wizard is going to win by 2, which... Is there anything else our champion has? Leader, veteran, running attack. He can use the rest of his movement to slide along to... Well... Now, here's the deal. If we go fight this guy, both of these have activated. We can go fight these guys and run a blocking pattern. Let's do that. Now, we're going to fight one archer, but that's all we're going to be able to do this turn. Because he doesn't have any movement left to get to... This guy is like behind his friend. So this will be just a straight attack. Now here, again, because he already charged, he used his momentum. So we're only going to be at +1 for the fighting a guy on foot. We get an 11 for the rider, which becomes a 12, versus a 7. So a difference of 4 means our wound check is at +1. And we get a 13 to eliminate the guy, but if he passes an 8 up and he fails... So this guy is eliminated, and because we eliminated him, we can move an additional 3 centimeters to consolidate. And we're going to pull back 3 centimeters to right there. Now our archer has a shot, and he can race to this point right here. We're going to try to get this guy off the table. At least we can get 1. That's going to end the turn, and we need some new cards. In addition to a new deal, I would like... in addition to a new deal, I think we're all feeling that right about now. There is an orc, remember, that he is hiding behind the bushes here. I changed the angle to freshen up our view. We get a 5 and a 9. The elf gets a queen and a queen. That's this guy. Now the fire wizard, he's not a lizard. Maybe he's a lizard man. Leaders often are. We get an ace for him, and he is going to take full advantage of that. These two guys are going to have to go late. However, is he going to take advantage of that? He's got to choose. Does he want to use that as a king? How far apart are these two fellas? They are they 5 centimeters apart? It's really close. It's right on the edge. I'm going to let the die decide. On an even, they are within 5 centimeters. And an odd means they are not. All right, all that does is it changes the spell that he wants to use. Instead of casting an area effect spell, he's going to cast a more powerful spell, And it's gonna make him tired. It has a recharge of 1. It takes 2 actions to use this spell. So that's all he can do. To get this spell off, he needs to roll a 3 or better. He is at -1 because he is shocked. But he's at +1 because he's smart. So now he needs well, wait a minute. What is it? He's smart, so he's got a +1. So he needs a 2 or better, but he needs a 3 or better because of the shock, right? He does get a reroll, but I rolled a 7 for him, so he gets the spell off. And it's interesting. The target rolls on the wound chart based on their armor. If you're wearing heavy armor, it's a +2. Oh, you know what it occurs to me? This guy ran on that one couple of turns with 10 centimeters. He's only supposed to move 8. I don't know. Maybe that's why he's getting blasted so hard, because he's just sucking wind. So this is +2. With the shock marker, it's +3 on this wound check. A 1 + 3 is a 4. He's going to take another shock. I don't think the bonus only applies if the armor is metal and not natural armor. All right, that's fine. Does the armor provide a saving throw against when your armor is heated up? I don't think it does. As an independent, neutral referee, I'm going to rule that you can't use armor to defend against a spell that makes your armor into one giant ouchie. That's going to be it for the spellcaster. Now he has to worry about this archer either racing to safety, and I want to get at least one messenger. I said it was an escort mission, so he's going to race over to here on the Queen of Diamonds. Well, technically, this guy's going to go first on the Queen of Hearts. And I feel like I think we got to do it, man. I think we got to try to get this guy off the table. He can move 7 to be where that guy is, and then another 5. We're going to bring him right over to here. So we should be able to get 2 of these guys. The question will be, can we get one of these guys off? The other question will be for the orcs. The 9 goes next, and he can slide over and take a shot at the champion. The champion is 9 centimeters away. He will hit on a 5. And with an 8, we get the hit. Oh, I'm sorry. He's going to be hitting on a 6. When you shoot at mounted figures, you're at -1. The 8 is a wound, which will be saved on an 8 or better. And it does not. So our leader, he suffers the fate of those who leave their friends to their demise. Now, the banner still applies, but the leader does not, as far as the bonuses to recovery checks. Everybody gets the +1 because the banner is still on the table. The ogre moves to here, and then we slide over, and we have to decide, what are we going to do with this other archer? Now, this archer, because he's wounded, he's only going to be able to move 8 centimeters per action. That could make a big difference. This guy is going to make his recovery roll. Do we make he's at -2 on everything he does. Do we charge in and attack, even though we're at -2 shock? I think we do. I think that's a good idea. If we can put this guy down, it frees up our archer. It's really about the only option we have left to us. So we move into combat. We're going to roll 2 dice, and we're going to be at, now, the first shot. Oh, you know what else? I forgot. That sergeant ignores his first shock marker. So I can take that off. What's his ability? It's called Nerves of Steel. All right, that's good. That means they are rolling at even Stevens, but our brawler gets the reroll. That's the blue die. The fire wizard wins by 1. The captain rerolls and wins by 2, which delivers a wound roll, which delivers another shock, and this time he absolutely decides to push the guy back 2 centimeters and then take his place. That could have gone way worse for our spellcaster. And that's going to end the turn. But if our captain goes first, he can run 8 centimeters away. Tricky scenario for the elves. I'm going to go... Here's our... I know I said I wouldn't move those, but I need you to see where my champion is. I'm going to go from right to left on these cards. So we get a 6, and a 10. And then this archer down here will get a 4 of spades. The archer back here gets the 4. The champion gets a 5. The leader of the elves, and the ogre gets to go first. And the ogre is licking his chops. Chomp! He's going to dive right in, and he is going to bash away. The ogre is a brawler. He gets to re-roll. He's a brute, so he's rolling a d12 on melee. And it just occurred to me, when you shoot at a mounted figure on an 8-up, the mount is hit, which it's not, but at least we checked. A rider on an 8-up, mounts are out of action unless there's a trait that overrides this. A rider shaken by shooting, that's not true. A mounted... I gotta reset this. Our ogre goes back his 10 centimeters. This is not a wound. The horse is going to disappear, and I have to roll a d10 for the direction and the distance that the horse moves, but our captain, my captain, is going to appear right here. Like so. And I mean, I can roll. The horse is going to appear like 5 centimeters over here. You can hop on the horse, but we're just going to ignore that. We're going to treat the horse as 1 extra wound for that guy, so that when now the cards are still the same, so when our ogre comes barreling in, now he's not fighting a guy on a horse. That's going to make a big difference, because our leader now, it's going to be a straight d12 versus d12. The leader does have... he does have a pike. So he is at +1 when he fights defensively. These polearms have some interesting little sub-rules. You are still in hand-to-hand combat, but because he is defending, he is going to be at +1. The ogre, as I said, gets the reroll. He's got the great big club, so he doesn't get a bonus. And let's see, is there anything else? That's about it. He gets +1 on his wound roll, but let's roll the fight first. The blue die will be for the elf. The elf gets a total of 12, 13. The ogre gets a 10, but he gets a reroll. So we might, do we want to use that reroll? If we roll less than 10, the wounds could stack up. I think we may want to keep that. But now, because he is like all over the place, he slams that club down, kawam, when the champion makes his wound check, this is going to be at an additional penalty on that wound roll. So we won by 3, that's +1. Then we are, is that right? Is it an additional +1 because he's so crazy? This is called, what is this ability called? The ogre he's a brute, so d12, yeah. Brutes are unthinking and stupid creatures, so he leaves himself wide open. If you lose a close combat, your opponent is +1 on the wound roll. And we're already at +1 because of the difference in scores. So I make my wound roll, and it's going to be a 12. And the big guy, who has light armor, is going to be out of the game unless he rolls an 8. He succeeded, but that does deliver 1 wound to the big guy. I think. Does he have any other abilities? He's large. No, he's going to fall down, and we're going to do our 2-inch separation so that the leader can still hop over the hedge on his activation on the 5, which isn't yet. So here's our leader has the 5 over here. Let me put that there so we don't lose track of it. Before we do that, these 2 guys are going to remember the mission, and they are going to leg it. Of course, this guy can only move 6 centimeters, but that does allow him... He's got to go around the tree. It allows him to get into the woods, at least the 1 centimeter. So here's 8. We'll put this guy right down there. And that's going to allow both of those guys to get out of distance range of the leader over here, whose turn it is to go. And he's going to, with his 2 shock markers, he's got to make a recovery check. And with a result of a 9 on the recovery for shock, -2 becomes 7. He is not shaken. That takes his whole turn. He still has to rest before he gets another spell off, but he has got the speed advantage now, and that may come in handy later on. The next card to go will be the leader with a 5. He is... Well, wait a minute. Does he ignore the hedge? He does. So we can move him 10 centimeters to here, and he is now off the table. So we've got our first of 3 victory points. This archer is going to go. He doesn't have line of sight, so we'll have to bring him up to here, and he's going to take cover behind the ogre and take a shot at this guy who is in cover, meaning that the 5 up, is he within 9 centimeters? Yep. Becomes a 6 up to hit. And with a 1, he will miss. That will end the turn. I'm going to do a nice intimate shot here. Because order is so important, I am going to carefully cut the deck. And I'm going to declare each card. The red wizard gets the 8 of clubs. The elf sergeant gets the ace of spades. The wounded elf archer gets the 10 of spades. The healthy elf archer gets the 7, and this is going to be key. The ogre gets to re-roll his recovery die to stand up, and the last archer is going to go last, and that's not great for the forces of the orcs. Obviously, our leader is going to move his 6 centimeters to here. We're not even going to bother. We're just going to trundle on over here. We just got to get these 2 guys off the table. Then the wounded archer gets to go, and we're going to brave the fire. He can move 8 centimeters, which will put him right here. And then the wizard gets to go, and the wizard he's got a long ways to go. Let's move him the 10 to here. We're staying out of the woods. And then the diamonds gets to go, and that's this healthy archer right here. Now, the healthy archer can't get over the hedge this turn, so he's going to move to here, and he's going to take a shot at this archer, and that's going to be at short range. Oh, I forgot. These guys have a reload of 1. That's okay. He can shoot if he... Oh, he moved and he shot. So he has to... I should be dropping reload markers on those guys. The elves don't. The elves are pretty cool. They're pretty tough. So he needs to take an action to reload. This elf does not. He moved 5 centimeters. He takes the shot, and he gets a 10 on the 2 hit roll. He gets a 5 on the wound roll for a shock, and the archer fails his armor check. He takes a shock marker from shooting, which I think means he has to fade back. Yeah, he immediately moves 5 centimeters to the nearest cover. Back to here. And it occurs to me, he is ferocious. He should be charge maxing. If he's within 10 centimeters, he's got to charge. Meanwhile, trying to recover, can our brute stand up? We roll a d10, and we get a 4, but he gets a reroll, and I think we could do better than a 4. We get a 7 this time, and even with a -1, that is a 6. And that means that, so the reload is there. Our brute is able to stand up on this turn. Is that going to be enough? Well, as I said, our archer is within 10 centimeters. He's got to charge this archer here. We're going to try to slit it. We just got to stop these 2 guys. Because he's ferocious, he's going to be at +1. Because he's got a sword, he's at +2. The elf is going to be at +1. The elf is rolling the blue die. The elf gets a total of 8. The orc gets a total of 8. That's going to be a tie. They will stay locked in combat at the end of this turn. And I'll put this right here. And that might be critical. Since it's tied, they stay locked. Nobody gets pushed back. Critically, though, it means the healthy guy can't scamper over the edge. I'm going to lay out 3 cards for the bad guys. It's going to be the leader, the orc, and the ogre. The leader gets an 8, the orc gets an 8, and the ogre gets a 5. Now for the elves, I'm going to go sergeant. He's running this way. Wounded and healthy. Sergeant gets a 7. The wounded guy gets a 7. and the healthy guy gets 7. Full house. Don't you wish? Hearts comes before clubs. We fight a straight-up fight. +1 versus +1. Nothing doing. Blue die for the elf. The elf is going to win by 4, and that's going to be a +1 on the wound die. And 8 + 1 is a 9. That is a wound reduced to a shock on a successful save, which it is. So that orc, and we opt to push him back 2 centimeters. Now our spellcaster gets to go, and he doesn't. If he rests, there's our spellcaster. If he rests, he doesn't have line of sight because the woods block line of sight beyond that 1 centimeter. Is he within 10 centimeters? Well, he's 2 centimeters from the edge of the wood. And then he will have 8 centimeters left, and from there he is within 4. He will be able to charge into hand-to-hand combat against the sergeant. And he might lose this fight, but at least he'll slow the sergeant down. He is, let's see, +1. He's only got 2 wounds. He's got a sword, so he is at +1 to melee, but he's fighting a guy that gets a reroll. This is going to be a tough battle for him. Red die for the guy dressed in red, of course. A 4 versus a 7. We'll keep the 7, winning by 3, doing a wound check on a +1, and a 3 + 1 is a shock, and we're simply going to push him back 2 centimeters. I mean, it was worth a shot. It just wasn't meant to be. And then all 3 of these guys get to go. All 3 are outside the hedge. So with a movement of 10, it goes 3 to the hedge for this guy, 3 to get over, and he can move 4 more. He's going to make it to right here, and he is still not quite there. Now this guy is going to use his first movement to get to here. And then he can use 1 centimeter, and he jumps over the hedge with his other 4. But our leader now, he only has a movement of 3 to here. And if he moves another 3 to there, that's going to end the turn, except Mr. Ogre now has the option of charging to get into hand-to-hand combat. And he's a pretty clever ogre. So he says, you know what? I think I'm going to move 4 centimeters to get over the hedge, and then 6 centimeters to get into hand-to-hand combat with this archer right here. If he can kill this archer, that might be the game. Well, it depends on the card draw next turn as well. We do have 1 more turn to go. We're going to be rolling a D12 versus a D10. Let me just roll them, see what happens. Sometimes this makes it easy. The D10 is going to be a total of 2, and our ogre, he could re-roll that 6, but we like the 6. We're good with that. He is going to be, he's large, so he gets a +1 on the wound roll. Not only that, but he's AP2, so the guy does not count as having any armor. So we roll our wound roll. That's going to be a shock, and the ogre says, you know what I want to do? I'm going to push you back to the edge of the table. That's just a shock. That didn't work so great. He says, I'm going to stay locked in hand-to-hand combat with you. I'll take the extra -1. Oh, I didn't think about that. This archer was also at... Oh, they're both at -1, so it didn't make a difference. Wait, that ogre... Oh, you know what? The ogre is impervious. That wound didn't hurt him at all. Oh, he should have ignored... What is impervious? Ignore... Oh, no, it just means he ignores wound penalties. So he won by 1 more, but look, it's fine. They're still locked in hand-to-hand combat going into this final turn. I have shuffled the deck. I'm going to cut it, and then you're just going to have to take my word for it. I'm not playing any shenanigans off camera because I'm getting tired. 3 for the red wizard. The orc shooter is going to get a 3, and the ogre is going to get a 4. Ooh. Our leader is going to get a 3. The archer who is in combat gets an 8, and the archer who is free gets a 4. A lot of low cards coming up. The archer who's locked in combat has to fight that ogre, and the ogre gets a reroll. The ogre gets a 12 to 3. We're going to make a wound check at plus everything, and this elf is going to go squish now. So we've only got 2 elves left to go. And the next elf to go, well, the diamond goes before the club, so the ogre can turn and give this guy a bonk on the head. And we roll our combat dice, and I'll worry about things later. Again, we're going to be at a 6 versus a 3. The wound check is going to be at +1. We get a 3 automatically. That's a shock. So that is going to pin him right there. We're going to stay locked in combat. And the next guy that gets to go is going to be the 3 of spades. That's the archer, orc, who will move in to fight against the guy that gets a reroll. They're both at -1 because of the shocks. The orc loses by 1. The champion is going to take that. He gets an 8, and the save is successful. So that 8 actually becomes a 7. That becomes a second shock. He's going to get pushed back yet again. Oh, yeah, wait a minute. Oh, he charged in, so he was at +1, but he lost by 2, I think? Or was that a tie? Oh, you know what? I think that was a tie. I don't think it matters. I think this game is over because this old boy is going to step up 5, take his rest, and we go on to the next turn. Why would he take his rest, you ask? Because he's going to try and drop another heat metal and knock this soldier out of the fight. We'll do one quick riffle shuffle. We'll cut the deck a couple of times, and we'll just deal them out. Oh, the suspense is killing me. We got our rest. We got into open movement. I'm going to do the elves first. The leader gets an 8. This guy gets an 8, but he is stuck in combat. The ogre gets an 8. Who shuffled these things? That's a lot of 8s. The archer gets a 5, and our spellcaster gets a heal 1 wound. The spellcaster goes first, drops that heat metal. Anything but a 1 or a 2. The 9 is successful. It does a wound check at +3. Let me re-roll that because it's really badly cocked. Wound check at +3 with a 20, and then no save means this guy is dead. That's the 3rd elf eliminated. But man, did they come close. Just a couple of, on that last couple of turns, if they had been able to just scooch a little bit more. You know, it's funny how the little bit of combat that happened over here made a huge difference. Because those little bit of shock markers and wound markers over here meant that it took all the speed away from the archers. Yet, even with those penalties, the Red Wizard took a long time getting back into the fight. But yeah, once he got back into the fight, it was all over, man. Those spells are brutal. And this guy here, not suffering any penalties on the wounds, that's huge. In fact, so is he. Hey, fun game. That was a little bit different. A little bit more thinky bits going on when you're doing one of those kind of escort missions. It's not quite so cut and dried, and I like that. What a fun game. You should get a copy. Till next time, I'm praying for you.